couldn't make it today. So if you prefer not to be seen, you know, switch your cameras off and things like that. But yeah, it's my real pleasure to introduce Ehab today. He's a founder and director of innovation, future kind of thinking home company Biome. I'm not going to say too much because I know he's actually going to do a bit of a presentation today to kind of cover quite a lot of things. He does a lot, he thinks a lot, he thinks deeply, and he's been doing quite a lot, really activating over the last couple of years since I've known him. He's actually in his new manufacturing facility, setting that up at the moment. So we're delighted for him to join. We usually start asking our guests to bring a circular conversation starter. I'm quite excited about this because in the past, I've asked Ehab to bring food to a startup shared incubator that represents their business. And he baked a cake that looked like some of the shapes and forms of his building geometric designs and circular economy. So yeah, Ehab, what have you brought as your circular conversation starter today?
Morning, everyone. I've got our mycelium insulation panel.
For those potentially not knowledgeable on the mycelium spectrum.
It's the root structure of mushrooms. So bring it in close up. It's the root structure of mushrooms. And when it's grown in a confined space, it creates a foam-like material that can replace plastic foams. Completely natural, uncoated. I'll tell you all about it in my presentation. But to grow it, you actually feed it waste. So it's the most circular material at the end of its life. Feed it back into the production process or to the soil. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So on that note, I think we'll let you pass over to you for you to share more about Biome and everything that you're getting up to with your growing team and mushrooms.
Amazing, thank you, Erica. Right, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Right, can everyone see my slides?
Yeah.
Cool. So, good morning. Today, I'd like to talk about how nature can inspire us all to revolutionize industry and restore local equity in the built environment. There we go. But first, I think it is now clearer than ever that our capitalist economies are simply not working, and most importantly, they're not working for the majority of the world's population. The pandemic has revealed multiple flaws in our current systems. It also showed us that capital can be made available in a blink of an eye to support those with power and influence. By being forced to stop almost everything and stay home, we started to collectively and critically question our consumption habits, our production practices, and the way we do business. We look around us and we see that we have contributed to a planet in pain, characterized by the scars we've left upon the geology of the Earth, as well as the onset of the sixth great extinction. This has become known as the Anthropocene. Whilst we once lived our lives as part of the natural world, the world we've built for ourselves is marked by a form of extraction and consumption that is changing the world around us. The land, the air, the water is saturated with pollution, and the world is hotter than it has been for 120,000 years. With the population of the planet predicted to increase by nearly 40% in the next few decades, the demands placed upon our world have far exceeded the point of sustainability. If the combined infrastructure plans of growing and developing economies are ever to be realized, we will need a further 7 planets worth of resources. But in nature, everything's in constant flow, constant circulation, with outputs from one process becoming the inputs for others. Left to its own devices, nature manages resources in a highly efficient manner and ensures that equilibrium is achieved in all its ecosystems. Biomimetics is not the simple imitation of natural form, but it is a deep understanding of biological processes and systems that leads to a set of principles which can be extracted and implemented in man-made technologies. The science of biomimetics is driven by the realization that our most prized inventions exist in more elegant, eco-sensitive, more efficient and effective forms in nature. The construction of lily pads, for example, makes our infrastructure seem underwhelming, and our air conditioning technologies and HVAC system just can't compete with the way termite mounds passively control and maintain exact temperatures throughout the year by building intelligence into their design and using appropriate materials. An in-depth and holistic understanding of how organisms achieve such feats of engineering can shed light on how we can solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. You can see here that as we move towards relying more on biology as opposed to technology when solving our problems, we find that we use much less energy, less resources, and more structure, more information. And with the advances in technology, computing, and as we're currently gathering enormous amounts of data left, right, and center, we can now mimic nature in ways that we could have only imagined. By taking inspiration from nature, we can move away from an extract, make, use, and dispose linear economy, which has a tremendous negative impact on the environment and our health, to one that is circular, where we ethically source, reuse, or recycle existing resources in our economy and consider the environmental, socio-ethical, and economic impact of the material or a product's entire life cycle. And that's exactly what we do at Biome, a research and development-led company that places biological systems at the heart of its inspiration to revolutionize construction and the way that we do business. We achieve this through our bio-based materials, construction systems, and a range of services. We're starting with the most tangible and immediate of these offerings, and that's our materials. ORB, or organic refuse biocompound, is a semi-structural sheet material made entirely out of food and agricultural waste and contains a 100% natural binder that we've developed. It is currently available for use in interior architecture and will soon be available for dry lining in buildings. It outperforms other wood-based sheet materials when it comes to mechanical strength. It is carbon negative, does not contain any synthetic chemicals or toxins, and is highly price competitive. The really exciting thing about ORB is that over the next 2 years, it will be developed into a plant-based concrete, which will be a serious game changer in the industry. We also work with one of the world's most wondrous organisms, mushrooms. We use the root systems or the vegetative part of a mushroom to consume a variety of organic and synthetic waste. And the outcome is one of the world's most advanced building insulation materials, which I've just showed you before we started. We've developed biologically unique species of mycelium, and we've naturally accelerated their evolution to favor particular traits that would improve their mechanical and physical properties. And we trained them to consume a variety of waste streams. We're currently testing our mycelium insulation against industry standards with the Building Research Establishment and the British Board of Agrimon. And we've been blown away by how we managed to achieve thermal conductivity values as low as 0.024, which may not mean very much to most people, but it competes with market-leading synthetic insulation. And in some cases, it is 2 to 3 times thermal insulation values of commonly used alternatives. It is naturally fire resistant. You can see here Zoe Lachlan biting in some crunchy ice cream after sitting on top of our mycelium with 1,500 degrees of heat on the other side. And as she cuts into it, you'll see that the fire has barely penetrated the material at all. And we did some tests on the heat of combustibility of the material against standards, and we found that in the event of a fire in a building that uses mycelium insulation, the fire would spread at around half the speed when compared to all other insulation products. For VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, which are released by materials throughout their life and affect the indoor air quality and therefore our health and well-being, we achieved the highest possible score of A+, making it one of the healthiest materials available. No synthetic coatings or additives, no chemicals, outperforming almost all other insulation products on the market by simply using nature's genius. Now, last year, we had an interesting little discovery in our R&D lab. which led us onto a super exciting journey. You may be aware of mycelium's remediation capabilities, known as microremediation, which is a process by which fungi produces appropriate enzymes that break down complex compounds, like plastics, into hydrocarbons and carbon dioxide. We've discovered that last year we've developed mycelium strains that are capable of consuming plastic. The rate of degradation that we were able to achieve was quite significant, and that was quite the revelation. Last year, the Onion Collective, a social enterprise at the vanguard of social action and community business, joined forces with Biohm, and we were awarded the Waitrose Plant Plastic Prize to continue to develop this research further and ensure that such technologies have a transformational impact on local communities. This has allowed us to carry out numerous experiments over the last year, where we continue to evolve our strains through a non-intrusive and non-GMO process known as directed evolution, which basically mimics the process of natural evolution in an accelerated lab environment. This has resulted in the development of 3 strains that can successfully consume PU, polyurethane, and PE, polyethylene, which are found in everything from your kettle and toaster to clothes, bottles, and furniture. Unlike other plastic recycling processes, which can propagate the current plastic crisis, encouraging the production of more plastics, our process assimilates or eliminates plastic completely, and all outputs, so the non-toxic hydrocarbons, are stored in the resulting mycelium material, which in itself is a replacement for plastic and other damaging materials, and the carbon dioxide is turned back into oxygen through the process of photosynthesis and fed back into our incubation spaces, providing fresh, oxygen-rich air to the next batch of mycelium, ensuring a completely closed loop in our manufacturing process, resulting in the production facility effectively being a carbon sink. Although our mycelium insulation, which is currently available, is grown on organic substrates, we aim to eventually integrate plastics and other synthetic waste streams from construction, fashion, and other sectors into our production process. When working with natural materials, it is essential to ensure that appropriate construction systems are used to maintain the building's breathability and end-of-life circularity, or even biodegradability. So although our materials are designed to be seamlessly integrated in current practices, we've developed Triangme, an interlocking construction system that combines all of our materials and is inspired by the way carbon molecules bond to one another. It does not require any permanent binders or fasteners to create robust structures that can be deconstructed at any stage of their life, allowing buildings to grow, shrink, and adapt to the needs of its occupants and local community. Architects can design any floor plan and still only use our 21 unique components. It reduces build times by 95%, build costs by 70%, and the environmental impact by 120%. It's patented in all continents and almost 60 countries, and we aim to launch Triangme with our plant-based concrete in around 2 or 3 years from now. Due to the vast environmental benefits and global potential of our technologies, it was essential for us to deliver this to the world in a way that is ethical, equitable, and sensitive to our current economic landscape, at a time where it is needed the most. So we're setting up the world's first community-led biomanufacturing facility with the Onion Collective. Apart from being the first large-scale facility to produce mycelium insulation, another unique aspect of this collaboration is in the way it acts as a catalyst for regeneration within a community. Again, taking inspiration from nature, we've developed a business model that allows communities to drive industry in quite a revolutionary way that ensures the regeneration of the local community, environment, and economy. Here you can see us standing in one of the last remaining buildings on the site of a paper mill, which was the beating heart of the local economy in Watchet, West Somerset. For 200 years, the paper mill recycled old cloths and other materials into paper, creating a thriving industry in Watchet. But on Christmas Eve in 2015, the mill shut its doors, almost overnight, taking almost 200 jobs and leaving the town in a very difficult situation. We're taking the mill's heritage into the future by using one of the last remaining buildings to build our biomanufacturing facility. I'm actually sitting in that building right now, which will be known as the Biomill, and through an ongoing profit share, gradually restore social equity and transform the local economy. As with everything we do, taking inspiration from nature, we can start to map out the major industries as a collection of systems, each containing agents that are capable of influencing their systems. Having an in-depth biomimetic understanding of the way our systems are linked and the role of every agent within each system, we can start to predict how a step change within an industry or an economy can take place. And it is this level of systems thinking inspired by nature that will allow us to work towards a more compassionate and equitable economy, which pushes the boundaries of the circular economy. I'm sure many people here are familiar with this Ellen MacArthur Foundation diagram of the circular economy, showing how technical materials and biological materials need to be kept separate when circulated. For us, we believe we can take this a step further. Technical materials, although can be recycled and circulated within industries, still contribute to excessive energy consumption and harmful chemicals and toxins. So as we've proven that 100% natural bio-based materials are not only capable of competing with technical materials, but can even outperform them, we need to start shrinking our technical material circles and grow the biological ones, as our materials can be indefinitely recirculated and only have a positive impact at every stage of their life. That's for the industrial economy. But we need to expand the circles even further. We need to consider the financial economy, which more or less dictates the world that we live in. If we look at how our financial economy currently operates, we will see that value is created and extracted in quite a linear and inequitable manner. We have large groups of people building value, yet only the few at the top reap the true reward, indirectly extracting and exploiting the collective value created. Whenever we look at statistics on wealth per capita in countries around the world, we often see something that looks a bit like this. But due to the distribution of wealth within these countries being incredibly skewed towards a very small number of people, we end up with a very inaccurate representation of our economy. And watch it where I am here today is the perfect example of how a community can severely lose out to a prevalent economic system, where the average annual income per household is actually £16,000, and that's not per person, but per household. By expanding the circles into the financial economy to recirculate value and wealth where it is being created, we can create a symbiotic relationship between community and industry and enable communities to regenerate themselves, much like in nature. And we don't stop there. The entire ecosystem needs to be considered. Governments with policies and legislation, academia with knowledge and resources, and large multinationals with major economic power and market control. All of those players play a critical part of the change. By aligning the incentives, motives, needs, and offerings of the various stakeholders, new ways of doing business and new economies start to emerge. Our first biomanufacturing facility is almost completely built in Watchet, West Somerset, and it will start by the end of this year, producing up to 3,000 square meters of insulation panels, so around 20 homes worth, per month. And over the next couple of years, will eventually be scaled to provide enough insulation for 120 homes each month. At that scale, we'll be consuming 240 tons of waste and sequestering around 30 tons of carbon each month. That's the work when it comes to carbon sequestration of around 19,000 trees. It will provide over 30 new local jobs, and through the equitable distribution of profits, and that's a 50-50 profit share with the local community, provide a constant income for the community, allowing them to invest in their education, infrastructure, and social action projects. We're also working with the YMCA to set up the second facility in Newcastle by the end of 2021, and have been invited to set up facilities by governments around the globe. Along with government support, we're working with more than 10 of Europe's top universities, some of the world's largest multinationals, and have been awarded and recognized by our work by national and international bodies. We're working towards a biomimetic future that will allow us to make Sorry, my slides have, there we go. We're working towards a biomimetic future that will allow us to make leaps in the fight against the climate crisis. equitably distribute wealth, and showcase a new global economy that benefits from global interconnectedness and the sharing of knowledge, but works with more reliable local supply chains and empowers local communities. A biomimetic future will help us save time and costs. It will allow us to be more resource and energy efficient. And at a time of climate crisis where sustainability is simply not enough, it will drive us to venture beyond sustainability and into regeneration so that we can start healing. And most importantly, it will allow us to look after our psychological and physiological well-being so that we can be that species that healed the planet that they almost lost. Thank you, everyone.
Wow. That's a real clap there. Thanks for sharing that Ehab with us. And I think it's really nice to see how you've gone from the kind of the material and the small and the product to really thinking about that bigger ecosystem structures of nature as well. A question that I'd like to kind of start and ask really is where did you get your inspiration, or where did this love and this connections to thinking about nature and using it as a design inspiration really come from?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because it actually started from a slightly sad and negative place. You know, when I grew up in Qatar in the Middle East, where environmental considerations and sustainability is not really a big topic or something that is commonly discussed. I could see, you know, huge buildings being erected and no consideration for the energy consumption. You know, air conditioning is very prominent there because we live in a desert. So I think it was just seeing that impact firsthand. And then before coming to university in the UK, I traveled a little bit. I'm from Egypt as well, so most of my family still live there. And I've seen like a really serious level of poverty where you're surrounded by plastic mountains, plastic rivers everywhere. And just seeing that, you know, seeing how the impact is created and then what it results in the actual you know, in other countries around the world or less privileged countries around the world, that was just really striking vision to see, like firsthand. And it really just inspired me to look at, you know, how this could be tackled and how, you know, something could be done about this. When I was actually traveling, I would find myself just spending a lot of time trekking and walking around in nature just to kind of get away from it all. It wasn't the happiest time of my life. I was just really sort of depressed by it. And walking through nature, you can just see like a really cohesive ecosystem work in collaboration and in harmony. And that just made me think, you know, why aren't we more like this? Isn't this our nature? Isn't this what our city should look like? Isn't this what our homes should look like? And when I came and did my degree here in university, I did design engineering and civil engineering, and now doing a PhD in architecture. I made sure that I brought that inspiration from nature into everything that I did and tried to sort of mimic that. And it was just really romanticized. And, you know, nature is not always beautiful and kind. There is a lot of harshness in nature, but it is just, you know, bringing that inspiration into technology, into manufacturing was where it really all started. And, you know, developed the construction system, the materials, and it kind of all snowballed from there.
Yeah. One question I'll ask you before we'll move on to some that I've seen in the chat as well is something I picked up on also was this aspect of health at the same time, the healthy aspect of the sector economy. And I think, and you know, you work in the sector a lot, I've been there a lot, that sometimes that element's forgotten. I think that's a really interesting area that you kind of included throughout your thinking, and if you could talk a little bit about that aspect.
Absolutely. I think it's often easy to think of the circular economy with a focus on material flows and resources. That kind of has you looking at sort of one dimension of the circular economy and neglect that it's not just a process or an approach that you take with materials and resources. It's actually a mindset and it's an approach. You know, the circular economy is not just about creating pretty circles. It is much more than that. It's about, you know, thinking about the links that you can create between different stakeholders, ensuring that you're taking a very systemic approach to the way you're looking at things. And that it takes into account not just physical things, but also health and also business models and the way economies are run. If we're able to appreciate the full impact, so that if you're looking at things as systems and you look at the impacts as outputs and understand what sort of other systems are then being impacted by that, so that becomes their input, you then start to have a much more holistic approach when you're taking something to market or bringing a new technology to market. You're no longer just thinking about how much carbon can I save, how much energy can I save, or how much carbon can I sequester, but you're also thinking, how can I have a positive impact on people's health? How can I actually regenerate an economy or a community? Or how can I have a social impact embedded in the business model? You're just looking at the world just as system, and in a way that is kind of how you know, organisms evolve and develop in nature. You know, the mutations happen and then they thrive and flourish because the system around them creates a perfect environment for them. So it's just about creating that perfect environment for what you're launching, so that then people can continue to live in those perfect environments for them to thrive and flourish.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And thinking about, you know, Reading's just launched our climate strategy, and this is kind of part of it as well, is always interlinking within our resource thinking and all of those actions of how to really build in the health, the social, the equity kind of justice parts as well.
Amazing.
That's fun as well. So, woof, loads of questions on the side now. Do you think it's,
and so many people, yeah, and so many people, I was just going to say beforehand, were like, wow, amazing, so inspiring, talk and all of that. So
thank you, everyone.
Just to pick on a quick one from Anzia, thank you. Is orb commercially available yet? Was orb the orange?
It's the sheet material.
Different sheet material. Is that available?
Yeah, so it is available for furniture, bespoke projects, smaller scale kind of production is available now. We're actually producing it from our R&D space in London. But the end of next year, it will be integrated into our biomills, into the production facilities. So it will be available at a larger scale. Right now, it's just, yeah, much smaller scale. We're doing everything by hand with Orb at the moment.
Yeah. I remember I met you a few years ago and your installation was just being tested. So it was a bit too early for my house.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll wait until it's tested. Now it sounds good. A question from Ornella is thinking about an interesting question, the role of the arts in this wonderful picture. And I suppose you actually have quite a design-led visual context as well.
I think, again, sort of following the stream of thought I was mentioning earlier about how you can easily get into this one-dimensional way of thinking when it comes to engineering and solutions and environmental development. But it's really important to consider how beauty plays a really huge part in our life. And, you know, it's important to not prioritize aesthetics over impact and engineering and, you know, the way something actually functions. But it's also important to make sure that the world we live in actually creates a sense of well-being for us, and beauty plays a huge part of that. Also, when you're working with a living organism, you've never got the exact same sort of surface every time. You've always got slight variations. There's a level of uniformity that allows you to get the kind of uniformity you need for industry and for testing against standards and implementing a product at a large scale. But there's always this real beauty, especially at a microscopic level, when you look at the hyphae of the mycelium and how it's growing. And that sort of art, or that part of the process, that I think is not really talked about enough, because it's not, I guess, taken as seriously in business as the impact, the environmental impact, and that side of it is really, really critical to keep as part of the conversation. And we do a lot of collaborations with artists. We're actually working with an artist at the moment to create shelters made out of mycelium that you can walk around and walk through. So yeah, absolutely.
Picking up on the mycelium, how long does it actually take to grow those kind of pieces of insulation? Or for example, that one that you were holding at the beginning, just to give a bit of a feel for their
So
speed?
the one I was holding, we'd be looking at about 3 to 4 weeks. In terms of our production process, we've got a full cycle from beginning to end, including the processing of the waste and curing the material, of 47 days. In those 47 days, you can grow 1 panel. You can also grow 1,000,000 panels if you've got the capacity. So it's, you know, that staggered approach to production allows us to still keep with the lead times of construction without having any issues.
Yeah, and on that kind of visual note and the kind of the process side, I think I've seen on your website, do you have any materials or things that could engage children or educational aspects around that? There's a few some questions on that, because I think they're really inspired by the, you know,
Totally.
showing what can be made out of otherwise waste or growing things as well.
Obviously, before the pandemic, we used to host a lot of events, and a lot of those events were targeting schools and you know, children aged 8 and younger as well. So I think we did a workshop with 5 to 8 year olds to create Easter eggs out of our old material, I think it was. And it was really inspiring to see what happened after the event. Because obviously we did it with someone who organizes events like that, and they're always in touch with the parents afterwards. And they're all actually asking their parents, why are you throwing that away? I can make a material out of it. Or what can I do with this? Or can I, while they're making the cakes, like, can this be turned into a material? And it's just that thinking is amazing to instill in children at such a young age, because that grows into, you know, ideas and into much bigger things as well. And it also encourages the parents to think differently, which is really exciting.
Brilliant. I'm just checking on time. Sophie, do you think, should we take some more questions, or should we move on to a little bit of interaction with everyone who would like to stay, of course?
Yeah. I'll be tempted to take another couple of questions, because I think there's so many amazing ones in the chat. Yeah. Well, I personally could listen to you all day, but if anyone wants to.
You do have a good voice for,
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say pick a couple of questions, and then we'll do one of the breakout rooms.
Yeah. So one from Malcolm was picking up again on the bio-based material. Do they sequester nutrients? To the extent they do at a global level, there's a sustainability issue of taking nature's food away. So are there any potential, I suppose, negative consequences or things that you have to be aware of in that aspect?
Yes, yeah, I think if, you know, and that's also, I'll take sort of 2 approaches to this answer. The first one is, yes, it can have a negative impact depending on the source, the resource that you use, that you start the process with. We're incredibly militant about the kinds of waste streams that we take in and the byproducts we take in. We only take byproducts and waste streams from industry that would otherwise go to landfill, incineration, or anaerobic digestion, all of which come much lower on the environmental scale when it comes to waste management. So our process keeps that resource in circulation. It sequesters that carbon and locks that carbon into the material over the long term. So we're finding that really large multinational organizations, even some, you know, controversial companies like oil companies, are actually wanting to give us their waste, or divert their waste to us, as opposed to give them to normal waste management, simply because it's an honest and genuine and direct way to offset their carbon using their waste streams, as opposed to just paying for carbon credits, which we're seeing happen all the time. Carbon offsets had a really negative impact really on the way we approach production and operate. This is a really genuine way of actually diverting your waste stream into something that is more sustainable. So I think, yeah, I think if it's managed the right way, you can always make sure that it's done in a sustainable way. We have had people offer us, you know, I can grow this crop on my land and provide you with all these waste streams, and not waste streams, but provide you with all this material. And we're like, sorry, we can't do that. We do not accept that. It's just propagating a whole other problem, land use and all of that. And our process is vertical. So you grow vertically, you don't use much land in our production process. So that's something that we're really, really strict on. And it's a really great question. The other side of that question.
Oh, Malcolm, did you have a, sorry.
Sorry.
No, I just thought where the question came from, who might have,
yes.
I might have phrased it.
You can sequester, from my point of view, you can sequester carbon till the cows come home, because and do more of it. It was the nutrients that worry me. If you take those out of the biological cycle at a global scale, if this became the global way of doing things, then are you facing another sustainability issue?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why we're not taking nutrients out of the biological cycle. We're taking nutrients that are otherwise having a really negative impact, that are burned, that are incinerated, that are creating huge carbon emissions. So, and that's the real sort of critical part of it. It's actually understanding what would happen to those waste streams. Before we actually collect any waste stream, we do an audit on that company's waste stream, understanding exactly where the waste stream is coming from, where it's going, and also look at its trajectory. Is it a growing waste stream? Is it a waste stream that is only going to be available for the next few years, and that may result in business decisions to look at more less sustainable resources? And I think that's the really critical part. It's understanding what the alternative impact would be, and if that impact is having a positive impact on biodiversity, on nutrient cycles, we don't touch it. And I think that's the real sort of red line.
I do know that there are companies who would not have your morals. And that worries me.
So Malcolm, that's exactly what I'm just about to come on to my next point. And that's exactly why we patent our technologies. Good. When we started, we were going to open source it all. And then we realized that that opens us up to a lot of manipulation, a lot of greenwashing, but also what it does is it makes us lose control over the protection of our technology that we've developed. And there are huge shocks in the construction industry that, can take that and run with it and turn it into something that is really negative overnight. So we decided to go with patenting, but we open source it in our own way, and that's through working with communities. We don't charge a licensing fee, we just give them a profit share, and we raise the funds to set up the facility together, either through grant funding or public funding. So it's kind of like a public service through our technology, rather than protecting it and patenting it so only we can benefit from it. And I think that's the other side of it as well.
We might see how we can get a little community thing going in Reading. Anyone here? As well. One thing picked up also was a question about, and I don't think I'd actually seen that you were also doing this, was the ability to process and digest PU. But also, are you looking at any other different types of hard to kind of recycle plastics, or using microremediation? That's a new word for me.
So PU and PE is just the start. We're starting with the most common and the hardest to recycle plastics. We're also using only virgin plastics in our experiments. And I know that doesn't sound great, but it's some very, very small scale experiment we're doing, Petri dishes. But we're only using virgin plastics because if you can prove that it can consume virgin plastics, then when it comes to the recycled, actually processed plastic that has already gone through machinery and has been processed, it will be a much more accelerated rate. So we're using a very controlled environment. We're using virgin PU, virgin PE, polyurethane, polyethylene to carry out all of our experiments. And we've actually 2 weeks ago started experiments with waste plastic on a larger scale, which turned out really exciting and really great. Right now, we're looking at the degradation rate being, although we've had results in tests that consume plastic in 2 months, we don't want to claim that yet until we've done a little bit more testing. But right now, the most conclusive degradation rate or degradation timeline is about 8 years. So we're bringing down a process that takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to degrade in nature. Some say it never degrades, down to only 8 years to degrade a whole mass of plastic of any size. That 8 years is going to be shrunk down to 2 to 4 years over the next couple of years. And that's when we're going to start commercializing that technology.
Wow. So I think that's amazing. Ehab, we'll let you have a little rest now. There's quite a few, there's still some questions on them, but we'll capture them. And if it's okay, we might summarize them and maybe send, or if we've got a little bit of time at the end. But we'd quite like to have an opportunity with those people here who joined us today to do a bit of an interactive session, which you're going to stay enjoying as well. I think just for the last 15, 20 minutes or so. So I'll hand over to Sophie.
Brilliant. Thank you, you two. I really got super inspired. I'm like, what can we do? And everyone's saying yes to a community in Reading. So that's really, really cool. Okay, so the second part of our session today was more linked to the Circular at Home Challenge that we ran this week for the Climate Festival. So the idea what I'll do is that I'll just share my screen, just the summary of what there we go. So this is the challenge. The idea of the challenge was really to give us an opportunity to get started on our journey. And often what we find is that the most challenging part is doing the first step, because we find a lot of reasons for not doing it or delaying it to tomorrow. And with this challenge, we actually set ourselves a different theme every day that was linking to the circular economy. And we've had an amazing, basically, turnout there. There's over 80 people that signed up for it and starting doing some action. So thank you to all of you for that. So what we thought we will do for this part is actually starting sharing ideas, because that's really where we get best value out of those challenges, is when we all come with new ideas, brainstorm, and that will trigger some new thoughts and things that we might want to try. So what we will do is just, the breakout room is going to be, we'll probably aim for 10 minutes. We'll put you in different rooms. And if you could chat with the others about what action have you taken this week, or if you've been too busy, because we do know this is the week, think about what action you would like to take that are linked to the themes, like the recycling, reusing, repairing, reducing, rethinking, as we're doing today. And I think Ehab did a brilliant job at getting us to think differently. And then the next thing for Saturday and Sunday are all about the reflection aspect and the resting. And that links quite nicely to the regeneration aspects of the circular economy that we broke down. Okay, so I will send you in breakout rooms now. And if you could talk about one action or few actions that you've done this week.
Might be grow some mushrooms.
Yeah, well, there's already someone mentioned in the chat earlier that she actually got a new a growing mushroom kit. So yes, I think some people might. I'm just checking the
it's also foraging season.
Sorry?
It's foraging season. It's the perfect time to forage.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what, Ehab, we find mushrooms literally in a small forest next to us, and we're with my husband every lunchtime. We just creep there for a little walk and get our mushroom for the day. It's amazing.
We've done quite a lot of foraging, but we've been so unsure about whether we can eat the things that we've found or not. We kind of don't want to pick them and take them out of the ecosystem without knowing if we can eat them or not.
Absolutely, definitely not worth risking for.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely. Right, so I'm sending you all now for 8 minutes, and I'll see you back here very soon. Welcome back, everyone.
It's always sudden. It's always sudden. I didn't see the time.
Even with the warning, yet you're coming back.
Yeah.
Conversations are always too good. Okay, so I was wondering if you could put in the chat box or unmute yourself if you'd like any action that you would like to share with us. And the idea here is that we're quite keen to almost like crowdsource different ideas that we can then all share again to inspire us. So if you could do that, I've got a question for you, Erica, whilst people are typing in the chat box. What did you do? Did you take the challenge this week?
Yeah, so I suppose I've been building in different things throughout, but one thing that happened was our retractable dog lead broke. So I took it apart to try and find out what went wrong, and then saw that it's a kind of one of these special springs, it's retractable spring, and it had severed off, so it wasn't able to pull the cord back in. So now, and I did find an option on the internet, I need to see if, like, which is always the play of repair, is like how much that costs, and if I can find the right size, and if I can potentially fix it, rather than, of course, buying a new one as well. So that happened on repair day. So that was a bit of an instigator for me to try and fix it, rather than just get a new one, which is the easier and faster option, unfortunately, which I think is one of those barriers at the moment.
So it's actually a great one, and that goes quite well, I think, with the rethink from today, is rethinking upfront as well. So it's like the repairing aspects in some cases, I think it's great, because then you realize that actually it wasn't designed to be repaired, which is really frustrating. But once we've done it once, then all of a sudden it challenges ourselves to say, the next purchase, well, I'm going to have a look if I could repair it and so on. And I certainly know it's something that I've been questioning. There are so many ideas that are coming up in the chat. It's fantastic. Hold on, I'm just going back to the top. People are saying sharing small actions. Great to have that on social media, and everyone in the group are growing their own fruit and veg. Fantastic. And that's also really good for the mindfulness aspect and the well-being aspect of it. So that's really inspiring. Someone says they should recycle food waste into food. Recycle food waste into sold food. Brilliant. If you got any companies as well, or came across any organization that can really be helpful in that, just put them in the chat as well. Virtual paths for an event, yes.
I had Anzia and was it Maria in my, Rachel in my group, and they're actually doing some make it at home kind of workshops as well, crafting from stuff that's in your recycling bin, but then you can then recycle it after you have made it into something as well. So that could be some nice resources for families.
Yeah, brilliant. Oatbox. And the idea, so the reason also why we're asking all of you that is because it's going to give you some ideas. Just if you don't know, in the chat box at the bottom, you've got 3 little dots, and if you click on that, you can save the chat as well, so you can see some of the ideas from other people. And with Erica, we really want to take all of that and put it somewhere that is useful for all of us to access and keep adding, because ultimately, if we want to be more sustainable, more circular, this is about finding out where those options are as well. Okay, so I am very conscious about the time. Sorry, the interactive session was a bit shorter, but we got so inspired by Ehab that I think it was totally worth it. I was wondering, actually, if Ehab is still here, if you could send you off with a final recommendation to all of us to having basically more circular living at home.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much, Sophie and Erica, for putting this group together, and I think we need so many more of these groups to come up, because it's just so inspiring to know what everyone else is doing and what everyone's getting up to, and do more of that. I think never underestimate the power that you have as an individual, and the change that you can inspire and the change that you can implement, starting very small, whether with your own veg patch, or going for a forage instead of going to the supermarket with a really good guide, knowing exactly what you're picking. And just taking these little steps, they all add up. Most importantly, it's not just about the impact that it's having, but it's about the psychological sort of transformation that happens when you start taking actions like those. You start to really change the way that you're thinking. You'll find it comes up more in conversations with your colleagues and with your friends and family, and that just becomes a gradual change in mindset. So those little steps may seem really small, or may seem very tiny as impact compared to the horrible impacts that some other larger organizations may be having, for example, and that may make you feel a little bit overwhelmed, but actually you're changing your mindset, and that's coming through in your work, in how you work with your family, how you speak with your family, how you speak with your friends, and in the actions that you're taking beyond just those tiny little steps. And I say those tiny little steps, but they're absolutely huge steps because of the impact that they have over time. So yeah, never underestimate the power that you have and the impact that you can make.
Brilliant. Ehab is going to become a quote. We're going to put your face with that. Can have it somewhere. No, but I totally agree. And the transformational part, I think, is really, really important. And I'm going to do a shameless plug, if that's okay, because I think what you've just mentioned links really nicely to another session I'm running tomorrow that is called Hack Your Box for Sustainable Life. And I know we had Susan here, but the idea is to take all of us throughout a personal journey, because it needs to start with us if we want to implement a bigger change outside in the world. And it's really that discovery journey about, really broadening our thought about sustainability, not just circularity, but sustainability. And then looking about our box, basically, and how we can think outside the box to really try to help and solve some of the challenges we've got there. So changing our inside mindset to show up differently to the world. And that's a workshop I'm running tomorrow. I think it's 1 o'clock. I'll put the link anyway, sorry, I should have known that. But that's that. And I'm also putting another link where we've got all of our link basically to all of our circular coffee conversation. You can have access to all the previous series and conversation we had with other people, guests. And we also have a newsletter where we basically curate some of the content that is happening in Reading, just to give you some ideas again to keep going basically and keep building that momentum together in that community. So a very big thank you to Ehab and to all of you for joining us today and for the Circular at Home Challenge. And again, it's the beginning, it's not the end, it's literally, it was the beginning to kick us starting onto that journey. So thank you and have a wonderful day and restful weekend.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, see you.
Bye-bye.